Let's bring in Francesco Rizzuto, who is the Dean of the School of Law at Liverpool Hope University. He joins us now live from Liverpool. Francesco, good to have you on our continuing coverage of King Charles III's proclamation. I don't know if you're listening in, but Sarah was mentioning this transition that King Charles III is going through. For the better part of the last 70 years, he has played an active role in charity, in philanthropy, and now he transitioned to take the place of his mother, sovereign of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. How do you think this transition is going to go for him? Francesco, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Fantastic. I don't know if you heard me, but let me ask you again in terms of how do you feel the new king, King Charles III, will transition into his new role?
I think that he's been well prepared for his new role by his mother, and indeed in the last 2 or 3 years he's been assuming even greater responsibilities. So I think the process of transition will be very, very smooth. It's very important to bear in mind that the monarch, whether it was the late Queen or the King, will actually not have a very important, a very significant political role. So in a sense, the transition will be one of the population getting used to having a king. And also, of course, the king will have to renew the bond of allegiance to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, as well as the other Commonwealth countries. So in a sense, that will be a process that should go very, very smoothly. I don't anticipate any challenges there whatsoever.
When we've been looking at the new monarch, just as the world did 70 years ago, we talked about how the new monarch needed to sort of modernize times. The late Queen Elizabeth II, did a very good job with that, and that has been acknowledged by the public as well as the world. In what areas do you think that the new king can adapt the country to this in terms of modernizing?
Well, I think that the Queen, the late Queen, as well as the royal household, really were very, very good in adapting the monarchy to the new phases, if you like, of a communicative age, whether it was through television, whether it was through newspapers, whether it's establishing direct contact with the people. I think that the challenge for the new monarch will be, frankly, to keep out of politics, because as the Prince of Wales, he did intervene in various areas, such as sustainability, such as poverty, such as, for example, his last significant intervention was over his obvious displeasure with the government's policy to send migrants to Rwanda. Now, in his statement yesterday, the King made it clear that he would not be able to do that kind of thing. In other words, that he would have to keep his counsel. And it is important to bear in mind that monarchs in the United Kingdom, it really is a very, very strict constitutional monarchy today. Their political role is really very, very restricted. However, I do think, and I guess some people might say I'm slightly eccentric in suggesting this, I do think that he will use his son, William, the new Prince of Wales, and I think he made that clear last night as well, to speak about the causes that I think the Prince of Wales, as well as William, but the Prince of Wales is particularly interested in. So his charitable work. I think what he said last night about the fact that the Prince of Wales, i.e. his son William, would try and bring to the centre of attention the plight of the less well-off in British society. And of course, what we're experiencing now and what we will experience over the next 2 or 3 years will be significant concerns over poverty, for example, possible destitution, and so on. So I think that it will be that kind of adaptation to the new economic realities. The monarchy has always been very good, certainly under Elizabeth, and I'm sure it will continue in adapting to the new technological realities. So that sort of process of modernization will continue. But I think we will see a monarchy that needs to adapt to the new socio-cultural realities of economic hardship, for example.
You talked about the transition. You touched upon an interesting point, and I want to pick up on that. In Friday night's televised address, King Charles III said that he had created the Prince of Wales and bestowed that title upon Prince William and Kate as the new Prince and Princess of Wales. You said that the new king would because of a strict constitutional monarchy, would have to be apolitical. But talk to us about how the Prince of Wales, the new Prince of Wales, Prince William, will actually transition into his new role and some of the roles that he's likely to play.
I think that the new Prince of Wales, like the old Prince of Wales, in a sense, i.e. the new king. I'm old enough to remember, actually, I was at school in the Channel Islands, and I watched his investiture in Carnarvon Castle in Wales. And he transitioned reasonably well. For the new Prince of Wales, again, it is about assuming certain responsibilities, certain public, highly visible roles. It will be about him. And again, the great thing about the British monarchy is that it is wonderfully adaptable. And that's why it's still in place, by the way. If it wasn't, they would have got rid of it 200 years ago, frankly. And that's why republicanism isn't so strong in the UK. So preparation, new roles. He will continue with his father's charitable work, for example, as in the Duchy of Cornwall, all his father and grandfather's work with the various trusts to assist young people and so on. But I think that what we will see is William, new Prince of Wales, more visibly, but not, if you like, in subtle ways. This is how the monarchy works, really. Make statements about certain things, make clear what the preoccupations are. So the media and trusted media outlets will be used in order to make clear what the preferences of what his preferences are, and I believe the preferences of his father. But let me just add, well, in a very somber times, a slightly amusing note. The previous monarchs that were called Charles in Great Britain did not exactly have a great legacy. Charles I had his head chopped off by Parliament. Charles II was brought back by Parliament, but basically stripped of all his powers, or virtually stripped of all his powers, and actually Parliament and so on obliged the monarchy to follow a strict Protestant line, but to keep out of politics. And this has become more pronounced. So if you like, the monarchy does have an influence over certain things, can have a certain sway, but it's very sotto voce. It's not, it's not something that's in your face. They don't stand up and make statements as though they were, I don't know, the president of the Republic, about the importance of the president of the Republic of Italy, for example, or other countries where they make statements giving broad guidelines, if you like, or broad perspectives on the future. In the United Kingdom, the monarchy is less intrusive, if you like, far more subtle. But I don't doubt for 1 minute that both Charles and his son William will make known their views where they feel it is appropriate to do so. But there are no formal institutional mechanisms to do that, to get to the technicalities of your question. The Queen and the King now obviously will receive the Prime Minister usually on a weekly basis. to be briefed on what's going on in the country. Of course, the standard formulation in British constitutional law is that the Queen or the King, the monarch, listens, provides guidance, provides advice, but doesn't directly intervene.
Francesco, I want you to hold on for just 1 second. Give me a moment to explain to our viewers what we're seeing in these live pictures from central London. In about 15 minutes or so, we are expecting the second proclamation to be read out in central London from the Royal Exchange. This actually follows the first public reading of the proclamation at St. James's Palace. Right now, flags across the country are at full mast rather than half mast, as it's been for the better part of the last 48 hours, I can say. For the next 23 hours, they will be at full mast, where various proclamations will be read in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as Wales, and then they will return to half mast for the continuation of the period of mourning. Francesco, I want to turn back to you in a comment that you made in terms of republicanism not being that popular in the country. I understand that, but when you also sort of coined or described the institution of the monarchy as being extremely adaptable, how do you think the British public will be approaching this period of adaptation as they see a new monarch for the first time in 70 years?
A man to boot. Remember, we all got used to Queen Elizabeth as almost a pillar of identity, a reference point. Charles will have to do that, and I think that will not be easy. We need to bear in mind the fact that, unfortunately, the Queen's family, her children, and sadly some of her grandchildren, have hardly been the paradigms of virtue, models which to admire. And indeed, their behavior has actually threatened, put under threat the monarchy and certainly its popularity. Of course, also Charles's first marriage to Princess Diana and the manner of her death, and then the manner of her mourning and her funeral. Quite honestly, the key for the monarchy is that they demonstrate that they understand public opinion, popularity, the popularity of the monarchy, the way it's perceived, the conduct of the monarchs, of the monarch in particular, of course, but the children, the wider family, is very, very important. Of course, what they will try and do, and we're already hearing this, is narrow the so-called inner circle of the royal family, the royals that count, right? So that way you minimize some of the, let us put it this way, the behavior, the conduct of some of the other royals that have been great stories for tabloid newspapers, but hardly adding to the dignity of the office. Now, this will remain the case. Let's face it, where you have a family with many children behaving in particular ways, and then we have the monarchy, and we must never forget that, which is the symbol of Great Britain, the state, and the dignity that should go with that. There's always going to be a tension. So I'm pretty certain that they will be very, very mindful of the importance of ensuring, A, that the monarchy remains above politics, and if they do make comments, if the King or the Prince of Wales or one or two others make comments, that they go with the flow of public opinion. That in a sense they become the people's monarchy, sometimes against the government, but they don't have to explicitly say that. Now, that's very, very important. So, quite honestly, the behavior of Harry, his younger son, and Merkel, his wife, I think that will be toned down. It will have to be toned down. You cannot have members of the royal family being the #1 headline in the popular newspapers because of their antics and so on. Or you certainly cannot have the wife of a prince of the royal family saying that the royal family is racist. So this has all got to be managed. It will be extremely difficult to do so, but I think that these are going to be some of the challenges that Charles is going to face. You know, the period of mourning will be over. There will be a coronation. It's conduct after that will be very, very important. And you know, I reminded myself in answering your question about the fate of the previous Charles that had been on the throne. I would say that the greatest threat to this Charles is the behaviour of his relations, really. Whether it's, I'm sure there won't be any difficulties or challenges with William, the Prince of Wales, but there might be one or two little challenges.
But Francesco, couldn't that be also said? You know, when the late Princess Diana was married to Prince Charles, in terms of determining the fate of the monarchy, because she was not sort of in that traditional Orthodox role of, she was outspoken, she did a lot of charity work, and she got a lot of attention in the same way that Meghan Markle is perhaps getting today.
Yes, I to a certain extent, I don't disagree with you. However, we must place things in their sort of historical and temporal context. You know, Diana was different because she was a princess, and in British culture, of course, she epitomized what they would regard as a princess. I think things started to go, how can the English would put it, pear-shaped, started to become a little bit more challenging when it was obvious that the marriage with Charles was on the rocks, over, and really she became outspoken once the marriage was over.
Okay.
And difficult to control. I think Merkel, the context is slightly different.
Okay. I do understand your point, and it's a good distinction that you point out. Let me ask you about the ruler's significant others. At the time of Queen Elizabeth II, we're talking about Prince Philip. Today, we're talking about the Queen Consort. We know that, I mean, because of sort of television programs like The Crown, one of the things that I picked up is Prince Philip actually had somewhat of a difficult time sort of transitioning into that role. Obviously, husband and wife, but also has to you know, be a half step behind the ruler of the United Kingdom. When you look at the Queen Consort today, they have been lovers, partners, husband and wife for many, many years. So do you think it could be an easier transition for the Queen Consort?
Absolutely. Again, I think they've been married, 17 years now. And without a doubt, if you like, the apprenticeship has been long. She is well trained in the role. I don't think she will have any difficulties at all in adapting to being the Queen Consort. Indeed, it will make her slightly more visible, and I'm sure that we will see a higher profile for the kind of charities and good causes that she is interested in. She won't have a challenge. I think that Prince Philip did have a challenge, because he was of Greco-German origin for a start, even though he was in the Royal Navy. His branch of the royal family was slightly challenging, particularly on his mother's side. So there were obvious difficulties and challenges with the British establishment, really, the traditional British establishment, because Charles was, if you like, in that bloodline, in that, how can I put it, part of that broader universe, but he was an outsider, let's be clear about this. But he adapted brilliantly, I think. I think he was a great supporter of the Queen. And I think once he died, really, I think the Queen continued, but it was more difficult for her, of course, combined with her age as well. But I don't doubt for 1 minute that Camilla has already adapted very well to the role, and indeed will probably be more visible now, given that the late Queen is no longer there. She will fill the space, if you like, that the new role gives her. I don't doubt that for 1 minute.
Let's just remind our viewers what we're watching right now. This is just another ceremony that's about to take place in central London at the Royal Exchange, where the second proclamation will be read here in, I would expect, the next 5 to 10 minutes. It is expected to start at 12 noon. We've seen a previous one about 55 minutes ago being read out at St. James's. Francesco, you mentioned the role of the sovereign of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, not having a political role. We know that King Charles III, in his role as Prince Charles, played a very active role in terms of some issues that are close to his heart, primarily climate change. How do you think, what can he do with regards to this?
Well, I think that a monarch, his views are known, and because he's become king, it doesn't mean he suddenly doesn't have those views anymore. So, unlike politicians who lose elections and then basically put their principles in their back pocket, here the monarch's views, as Prince Charles, are obvious. We all know what his preferences are in terms of sustainability, in terms of protecting the countryside, in terms of charitable trusts and so on. So there won't be anything new in his approach. However, formally, of course, when he meets the Prime Minister on a weekly basis or through other channels, of course, he will make known his views. What he should avoid at all costs is that his views become party political. In other words, that they can be mobilized by one party against another, whether it's the government or whether it's the opposition. I don't know whether you recall, perhaps you will recall, but the absolute outburst of outrage that was caused when a daily newspaper claimed that the Queen was for Brexit. Now, whether that was true or not, my hunch, I don't believe it is true that the Queen was Brexit, but that was a direct intervention in the middle of a referendum campaign. It caused absolute outrage because, of course, the monarchy does have soft power. And by soft power, I mean through their behavior, positive or negative, through their views, if they chime with public opinion, can be a very powerful political influence, if you like. Today they call them influencers. So I don't doubt for 1 minute that from time to time King Charles will make the Prime Minister, and it's with the Prime Minister they have the closest relationship, really, because they see him on a weekly basis, where they will say what they think. These meetings are highly confidential, so it doesn't necessarily leak out when they're happening, or even within a short period of time after they've happened. But I don't doubt for 1 minute that behind the doors, of course, in British public law, constitutional law, it is, clear that monarchs listen, provide guidance, and the Queen certainly did this over her 70 years, and provide, how can I put it, not warnings, but it is known that they have made certain views clear to Prime Minister.